as kind of the order and times and the like that I was thinking that would work. All right, and because you're doing lots of these sorts of classes, we're trying to condense everything into shorter time frames so that you've got more time in between the classes to have a non-staring at the computer time. All right. Now, so what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into it. So if I hit the present button and go to window, I'll jump there and jump to here. Now, this is your Nearpod code, QZH6. That should be the same one, yes? All right, I think I posted it to the classroom as well. So if you wouldn't mind jumping into that, that would be awesome. And as we go through, there are going to be questions. There are going to be things I'm going to be asking. So please make sure that you're ready for that. Now, QZ2H6, that's the code. It appears on the top left hand as per normal. So if you do get lost, you're going to be able to jump in there as we go. I've got only 2 thus far seemingly joined. So it'd be good if I could see the others learners jumping in as well. That's okay. So we are actually recording the lesson. So if need be, because technology sometimes fails and we sometimes have to figure other things out. So if things all go wrong and the technology doesn't work, don't panic. We are recording lessons, so we can upload them into the classroom and you're going to be able to follow along with those. Or if I have a technological meltdown, again, don't panic, okay? We can sort those things out as well, because those things happen from time to time too. All right, so market-wise, let's have a quick look through. Now, we've learnt about markets, what they are. All right. Now, this was the one here that I wanted to start with today, the idea of an equilibrium. The idea of an equilibrium. So what we're doing here is we're taking what we've learnt about with regards to supply, what we've learnt about with regards to demand, and they're meeting. They're having a wee conversation. All right, and that's going to be very important where they have their intersection, so to speak. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing just for a minute and go back to here. Good to see you. Hello, come on in. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my microphone, and then what I want you all to do is I want you to discuss with each other what an equilibrium is. All right, so you've done the notes, so you know what it is. And yeah, it'll be discussed. Now, you can use, obviously, there's chat functions, all right, through Meet, so you can use those. But it might be quite good also just to talk as well, all right? So what you think an equilibrium is. Are you ready? Hold on. I'll just turn my mic off so you're not distracted by me. Ready, set, go.
So we talking or not, guys?
Sorry.
The meet supply meaning demand. Supply meaning demand.
Wasn't it the intersection?
Things being equal.
Wasn't it the intersection?
Yeah, like the normal or the equal, where all things are equal in it.
Yeah, the middle point.
Ceteris paribus.
Wait.
Hi, Lancelot.
Or is it when, like,
It's when supply and
demand
reaches
it intersects,
right?
but then it's equal or something.
It's like when it reaches.
They meet at a
Yeah,
point. They meet at a unique point.
When they
It has equal values or something.
No, because the value is then quite balanced and fair.
Yeah.
So I think the point is if you leave the market. like for enough time, it should reach the equilibrium.
Yeah, well, well, I don't think it's always the case, but sometimes you leave the market and it'll go back to where it was, the equilibrium. Yes.
Yeah. So the intersection point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good stuff. Well done, team. Well done. Very good. So the equilibrium point, as we have discussed, is really, or you have discussed, really important. It is very significant in economics. So we're going to have another wee look at it. There it is. Woo, pretty, right? Now, I've described it there as being balanced. Now, because what we've got is we've got all of these supply conditions that we learned about with regards to supply, and then all of the demand conditions that we learned about with demand. So all of those determinants, all of the things that put the curve where it is. Now, all of those, in order for this to work, all of those forces have to be in balance. So it's one of the only times in economics that you're going to be able to say, may the market forces be with you. Ooh, Star Wars reference. Did you notice that one? All right. It's about the balanced forces. It's what we say is a situation where there's no tendency for change. It's kind of like when you're at home, you've had a busy day, you're just sitting, chilling, relaxing, a cold drink in your hand, watching the TV. You really don't want to get off the couch. All right. You just want to rest. And in order for you to get off the couch, something has to come along and kind of, I don't know, crowbar you off the couch in order to get you to move. Do you understand? Does that sound about right?
Well, what?
Well, if you are resting at home and you just want to rest, in order to encourage you to not be resting and get up and do something, tidy your room, start making dinner, whatever it is, someone possibly might need to come along and say, hey, get up and get moving. So that then becomes an outside force interacting with you in order to encourage you to do something. Otherwise, you might just sit there. Yeah. So that's what we're kind of hinting at with regards to this equilibrium. If we left the equilibrium alone, it would just sit there. If we left the market alone, it will automatically sit right there. Okay, so what it looks like is this. This is an idea of how the market moves, okay, to an equilibrium. So if for some sort of weird situation, we found that the price was too low in the market. So the price was set too low. For some reason, it's down here. What that leads to is all of these suppliers saying, we can only supply this quantity here at that price. Whereas consumers go, woohoo, cheaper price, yay, I'm going to demand this quantity here. So what we see is we see an excess of quantity demanded over quantity supplied. There's more quantities being demanded than there are being supplied. So the situation there is what we call a shortage. There is not enough of that particular product available. And when that happens, something rather unique happens. If nothing else is changing it, all right, the market will automatically adjust. And how it does that is that the prices are going to start being pushed up, because it's you, the consumers, are going to start saying, tell you what, hey, let's start bidding the price up. It's like at an auction. If you've ever been at an auction, there's like one product and a whole bunch of people want it, and they start saying, oh, well, I'll pay $10, I'll pay 20, I'll pay 30, I'll pay 40, I'll pay 50. And the price starts to go up. As the price starts to go up, it becomes less and less affordable, so the quantities demanded start to fall. And as that happens, we see also the price rising. The quantities supplied start to rise, because it's more incentive for the producers to produce more, because they're going to earn greater profits or revenues. So the market, if left to itself, it's going to end up back at this equilibrium. So the disequilibrium, right, a period of non-equilibrium, if you like, won't last in the market. It will automatically, all by itself, nobody tells it to do it, right? Abu isn't sitting there going, this is what has to happen, all right? It will automatically return to a situation where supply equals demand, assuming we're not interacting and interfering with it, okay? It will just do that. So that's if the price is set too low. But the opposite to that is if the price is set too high. So here we see it. All right, so price 2 is actually higher than price 1. Price 1 is the equilibrium price, the price where supply equals demand. That's P1. P2 is above that. So what we see happening there is all of a sudden consumers are saying, no, I can't afford that. So there's a decrease in the quantities demanded, right? Walking our way back up the demand curve up to here. But with regards to supply, because the price is higher, producers got an incentive to increase their supply, the quantities that they supply. So they are increasing the quantities that they supply out to here. So from here out to here. So quantity demanded decreases, quantity supplied increases. And here again, you've got a situation where supply isn't equaling demand. It's a disequilibrium. So if that's the case, in this situation, you've got more quantities supplied than quantities demanded. So the term that we use is an excess of supply, or in other words, a surplus. A surplus. Now that, you've probably heard the term before, there's too many of the products. They're all sitting in the warehouse. Nobody's buying them. Oh no, what do we do? Well, we don't want to make more of them. So producers start decreasing the quantities that they make. All right? As they do that, the price will start to fall because they're trying to sell all of the products that they've got sitting in their warehouse. So they've got to decrease the price. As the price starts to fall, consumers start increasing the quantities that they are demanding because it's now cheaper, more affordable for them to buy it. And as we saw before, you end up back at the equilibrium. So this situation of disequilibrium, when the price is set too high, it doesn't last either. As long as there's no intervention by the government, this price will not last. The market will always, in theory, always return to an equilibrium. We may not like the equilibrium. We may think this is a terrible price for whatever reason. Doesn't matter. The market always goes there. It's kind of that weird situation where it's kind of the language that Adam Smith used when he was writing about this. Remember, he's writing about this in 1776. Okay, so the language that he's using is very Shakespearean, but also very kind of religious in a way. Okay, so he's talking about the market moving as if it was controlled by an invisible hand. All right? So nobody is directing it, nobody is telling it, the market just moves there. All right? The analogy I used in New Zealand was you turn the taps on here, you turn the tap on here, and the water automatically goes down the drain. You don't have to tell it to do that, it just goes. All right? Okay. Now, then in our market, and this is a big one, this is the next big application of this model. What happens if demand increases? What happens if demand decreases? So what I'm going to want you to do, you ready? Here it comes, is to have a go at it. All right, so in this case, we're going to have the market for hats. So what you need to do is have a go drawing in the drawing space that will appear on your screen. And you're going to draw a market for hats. And then you're going to see if you can illustrate what happens in that market if demand increases. So the demand curve shifts to the right. Have a go.
In a supply-demand curve? Or?
Yes. Yep. So for future reference, when we say market, we're talking now about a diagram where you have supply and demand. Yep, good. You got market diagrams coming in there. That's excellent. And as said, we want to see what happens when the demand curve for hats increases. Well done, Abu. That's looking good. All right. When we do it, we want to be seeing what happens to the equilibrium price and what happens to the equilibrium quantity. You'll see why in a minute. Good work, Brandon. You need a supply and a demand.
Mr. David,
Mm-hmm.
in the future, can it be curved or just straight lines?
That's a really good question. There's not necessarily an easy way to tell you this. Well, there is. The easiest way to tell you this is if they are straight lines, they're easier to use and they're easier to analyze. Okay?
Okay, but there are curved ones.
There are curved, yes, absolutely. There are curved supply curves and curved demand curves. And we're going to look at a curved curve, but we're not necessarily going to use the curved curves because they're going to be a bit difficult for you, a bit too difficult for you to sort of cope with at this particular point. All right, there will be one curved curve that you will analyze, yes, but the majority of cases you are just going to be worrying about straight line curves.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right, good. I see demand curve shifting. Fantastic. All right. Remember the demand curve. Okay, the demand curve is the downward sloping one. That's right. So we've shifted our supply curve here. We need to shift our demand curve. So, and then remember, how would we illustrate what happens on the price axis and the quantity axis? How do we illustrate that? How do we show it? Making you do work at 8 o'clock in the morning. Goodness me. Good. Okay. Yeah. And it's not easy also because you're trying to do it on the computer. What you'll have, which will be useful, will be pen and paper, because then you'll be able to just like sketch them out. So when you have questions in an exam, you can do a quick sketch diagram to illustrate what happens. You might have to draw one in an actual exam to explain what's happening. Okay. You might need to, in the multiple choice paper, which is paper number 1, you might need to just have like a separate sheet of paper somewhere nearby, or even actually inside the paper itself, do some sketches. All right, and we'll talk about why you might want to do that in a minute. Good, you're all showing the shifts in the demand curve. What I'm also keen on seeing is the impact here on the price and the impact on the quantity. Because what you're ending up with, as you see, is you've actually got a new equilibrium. So you were at this equilibrium. Now, because your demand curve has shifted, you're now at this equilibrium. So this equilibrium here had this price and this quantity, but this equilibrium now has this price and this quantity. So we're wanting to work out what has happened to price and quantity as well. Yep, we've shifted the supply curve, have we? Yeah, don't worry, this isn't the last time you're going to be doing this. It's good work, Kane. Keep going. Try and work out what's happening on the axis here. So the original equilibrium price is here. Now you've got an equilibrium price up here. The original equilibrium quantity was here. Now you've got an equilibrium quantity here. So there's been an increase here in quantity and an increase here in price. Good work, Abu. That's right. Oh, your price gone down. You've shifted supply as well for some reason. I'm not sure why you've shifted supply too. Good work, Jackie. You've got the demand curve shifted. It'd be good to show the supply curve as well, and then the equilibrium price and quantity. That's right, Kane. Well done.
Do we fill in the form?
Yeah, the form's there for you more towards the end of the lesson. You'll be filling that one in. Okay? Don't panic too much about that at this point.
Okay.
Okay. All right, now, what did you notice happened to the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity when the demand for hats increased? What's happened?
So the equilibrium shifted and
Yes.
the price increased as well?
Yes, good. Price has increased. So if we have a look at what you've done there, Abu, look at that. Excellent work. Look at that. Hey? Yes. I mean, if you were doing this on pen and paper, it might be a little bit more accurate, but obviously doing it on the computer is not quite as easy. There's your original equilibrium. So the original price is here. The equilibrium price is P3. Well, it's $3 perhaps. Now the equilibrium is up here, which has got a price, looks to be about 4, maybe a little bit more than 4. So then you'd go P1 to P2 up there. Your quantities, they were again at 3,000, 3 million, doesn't matter. And now again just over 4. So you've gone from 3 to 4, Q1 to Q2. That's a good way to illustrate it. You might also in the future start thinking about the labeling again, so that we know what the curves are called. So that would be the supply curve. You could call that one D1 and that one D2. Or you could call that one D and that one D1. Again, it doesn't necessarily matter so long as you are showing the change that's occurred. Good. Well done.
Thank you.
All right, team. Now, that was demand. And then the next trick, there's some more ones here. This one has each situation and how to explain what happens. So this is just extra things. They're in the slides which you have. If there's been an increase in consumer income, what do we expect to happen to the demand curve? If there's been an increase in income, we expect the demand curve to shift, and we expect it to shift in which direction? Come on, team.
Shift to right.
Shifts to the right. Well done. Yes, it does. So this is what the application is now. The application is going to be identifying which curve shifts, because we've got demand. We're also going to be shifting supply in a couple of minutes. Oh, in a minute. All right. Which curve shifts? Then we need to know which direction it shifts. Because you remember we talked about the demand curve and we said it's only possible for the demand curve to shift in one of two directions. It either moves to the right or it moves to the left. That's the only possible directions it can move. So here you've got an increase in consumer income. So we've said that the demand curve moves to the right. Here, hats become unpopular in the market for hats. So therefore, you'd expect the demand curve to decrease, to move to the left. Here, you've got an increase in population impacting on the market for cars. So in that case, you'd expect to see an increase in demand because there's more people, population, people. There's more people in the market for cars, so there's more demand for cars, so the demand curve shifts again to the right. Now, because it shifts to the right, which was your example from back here with the hats, these ones, oops, yep, there they are, all right. Because it shifts to the right, what we saw happening and what you explained happening was the price increasing, the equilibrium price increasing, and the equilibrium quantity increasing. So it does that every single time. Anytime the demand curve moves to the right, you're going to see an increase in price and you're going to see an increase in quantity, which makes sense. We understand that. In the world where we live, if everybody all of a sudden goes out and buys a particular product, you would expect to see the price of that product rise, right? If there was more demand for it. Now, as you consider that, also consider the fact that demand curves could also shift, as we said, to the left, which was, moving on, this one. Hats become unpopular in the market for hats. So if hats are now less popular, there's that decrease in demand. So then we get to ask ourselves the question, what then happens to the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity? When the demand curve shifted to the right, the equilibrium price increased, and the equilibrium quantity increased. If demand shifts to the left, what happens to equilibrium price and quantity?
Would price go down?
Yes, well done. And the quantity?
Of course it's going to go down.
It's going to go down as well. So those are your options. When you're shifting demand, if it's increasing, price increases, quantity increases. If it's decreasing, price decreases, quantity decreases. And it happens every time. So you've only got those two options, all right? Increase, decrease, all right, when you're talking about demand. So anytime the examiner gives you a question and says, what happens in the market? Yes, you've got to figure out, firstly, as said, the application part, there's been a shift in demand. So in this case, I've told you, all right? Which curve is shifting? Demand. Great. Okay. Which direction will it shift? Right or left? Right. Okay. What happens to equilibrium price and quantity? Increase and increase. Done. Tick. And you can move on. So even questions that might be 4 marks or even 6-mark questions, they can be quite straightforward for you to answer with a bit of practice. Now that's demand, but, oh yeah, done that one. What about if supply changes? And we're going to give you an additional hint here in a minute. So now, hey, same trick. This time, it's the market for hats, and there's been an increase in supply. So I'd like you to have a draw, supply and demand. In this case, it's supply. It's the upward sloping curve. Supply increases. Now, if it's supply, remember, increase, moving away from 0. So it's moving to the right. Have a go. Good work. Okay. So we're wanting to see the supply curve, the upward sloping curve. It's going to increase, and the increase for supply is a movement to the right, because it is moving away from the number 0. Good work. Yep, there's the supply curve shifting to the right. And remember, we're wanting to see the same thing. See if you can identify what happens to the equilibrium price and what happens to the equilibrium quantity. Good labeling going on over here. Well done. Yeah, remember we're wanting Abu to see the supply curve shift to the right. It's an increase. That's it, Kane. Well done. Supply and demand, supply curve shifting to the right. Your arrows seem to suggest, Lancelot, that your supply curve is moving to the left. We want it to be moving to the right. Very good, Emma. Well done. I like it. Good work. Well done. See what's happening. Yep. The price change being shown. That's good. Yeah. Good work, Kane. All right. Remember, this is probably the harder one to do because you're trying to do it on your computer. And you've got to remember the direction supply curve shifts. Yep. Good work, Jackie. You've got the supply curve shifting, add in a demand curve, and if you can illustrate the price and quantity change, that would be fantastic. Good work, Brandon. And see also if you can work out the price and quantity change. Good work. And using color too. Gosh, that's fantastic. Good work, Lancelot. That's the right direction now. Well done, Harina. Remember to see if you can identify what's going on with prices and quantities. I really like your work, Emma. Well done. Look at that. Rockstar. Fantastic. Now, what we're seeing here is the supply curve, as said, shifting to the right. And what has happened to the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity? What do you think? There's the equilibrium price. It was here, somewhere around 2.5. Now the equilibrium price is somewhere down here, maybe 1.5. So what's happened to the price?
The price has gotten cheaper.
Yes, the price has, yes, it's gotten cheaper. The hats in this case have gotten cheaper. The price has decreased. Yes, absolutely. And the quantity demanded in this case, what's happened?
It has increased.
It has. Well done. Now, if I close that. Now, what you are hopefully seeing on all of your diagrams is that when the supply curve shifts to the right, the price level decreases and the quantity increases, the equilibrium quantity increases, and it does that every single time. All right. So again, all you need to work out is which curve is moving in the application questions and which direction they're moving. And then you will immediately know, okay, if it's moving to the right, price is going to decrease, quantity is going to increase. All right, now that's a bit different from demand. Remember, when demand increased, we saw price increasing and quantity increasing. So because supply is upward sloping, those two are, they behave in an inverse relationship. So they're going in the opposite directions. Price is decreasing and quantity is increasing. Well done, team. Well done. Now, there's a few more there that I have just thrown in there. Now, these are, again, are applications. So this is the extra for experts bit. This is what you need to be able to get to. All right? Not necessarily today, but you will need to be able to get to here. All right? So you're given, in this case, say, increase in raw material costs. So you've got a market model. It might be the market model for hats, right? Who knows? And there's been an increase in the raw material costs, which means, which curve are we talking about?
Supply.
Supply. Excellent. And if the costs of supply have increased, then which direction is the supply curve shifting?
To the right?
Close. If it's more expensive to produce the product, then the businesses are going to produce less of it. So therefore, the supply curve will shift to the
Left, closer to the zero.
left because it's closer to the zero. Well done. Now, remember, with supply, just as with demand, the supply curve can shift to the right or to the left. That's the only directions it can shift. So if when supply increased, we saw the price decrease, and we saw quantity increase. When the supply curve was decreasing, what do you think will happen to the price and the quantity? So if you have a look at your diagrams that you expertly drew, imagine in your head or even on a scrap piece of paper if you've got one nearby, imagine the supply curve decreasing, moving towards the zero. What will happen? Let's get Emma's one back up because it was so good. All right. What would happen if the supply curve was going that way? What would happen to price and quantity?
Price increase, quantity decrease.
Well done. And again, remember that it's inverse, so they're going to go in opposite directions. So when price is increasing, quantity is decreasing. When price is decreasing, quantity is increasing because they're moving in opposite directions. So that's the application, which is a higher level skill than just identification or even explaining, being able to apply it into all sorts of different situations. So we've got raw materials, you've got improvements to technology used in production, government laws requiring all hats to be made of renewable resources. Those are practical, real-life-ish situations that the examiner could just throw at you, and you have to figure out what curve is it talking about, which direction will it move, and how will that impact the equilibrium price and quantity. And as before, you might just have a piece of paper and do a sketch diagram next to it so you can figure it out, or it might be within the actual answer itself. So for example, it could be a 4 or a 6 mark question potentially, where you're given this as a little case study and you have to then figure out what happens in the market. Or conversely, it could be in a multiple choice question where you've got a market model, the situation is written up in the case study, and they actually show you what happens in the market, but they say equilibrium A, B, C, or D, and you have to guess which of those letters is the new equilibrium. That's different ways they could actually ask you essentially the same question. So it's about application. Now, where this is going, as you can probably tell, is that the next step from here, so once you've beaten this level of the video game, the next level is going to be not 1 shift, but 2. So what happens if the demand curve shifts and then it shifts again? What happens if the supply curve shifts and then it shifts again? What happens to the market price and quantity? Or a combination. What happens if the demand curve shifts and the supply curve shifts? Oh, all right. So you're going to get used to, from now on, those sorts of multiple applications and thinking along the lines of which curve, which direction, and how does it affect the price and quantity. Once we've mastered that, which won't take you long because you're all rock stars, once we've mastered that, the next step is then to say, well, what happens then in a market when the government intervenes? All right, bang, 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 okay? Why does the government intervene in the first place? Let's explain that. Let's look at what that all means. And that's, again, more applications of the same model. So what I'm trying to hint at, or not particularly well, I guess, what I'm trying to tell you, stopping sharing, is, all right, what I'm trying to tell you is that this market model is going to be the most important model that you're going to use pretty much throughout the course. I did suggest that a little while ago, that you're going to be using this again and again. All right, so knowing what the curves are, yes. Knowing how they move, left and right. Knowing the impact on the equilibrium price and quantity, that's what we need to be able to do at this point. So with that in mind, you will have noticed that I posted, let me go back to presenting, into the classroom, a wee activity. Let's see if I can find it. Where are you? Here. All right, so it should have arrived. Let's see, update, here it is. Okay, this one, which is entitled Market Model Application Skill Real Life Example. And all it is a Google Doc. Now you will notice already that there are examples in there from the other year 10s. That's absolutely fine. All right, okay. So what they've done, because they had this class before you all, is the idea is you put your name in, and then you're going to be finding, you do the research, you look up online a real life example of a market and what has happened in that market that has potentially caused the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity to change. So my example that I put in for you is where house prices have risen due to a shortage caused by increasing demand and not enough supply. And this link is the hyperlink to the news article that I'm using as evidence for that. Now, why I'm wanting you to do this, again, it's an application, right? It's looking for real life examples to further apply this particular skill, but it's also the link between the real life and the theory, okay, which is really important, particularly in an exam situation when you're going to be given real life case studies and have to explain them. Plus, it's fun. All right, so what I'd like you to do is to add in here. Now, you'll need to add, there's some more cells, and you might need to add another cell or two. So you should have access to that as a doc. You'll need to perhaps go on to Dr. Google, right? Do a search for news articles, have a look for different market models. I keep remembering I was reading techniques with regards to distance learning. There's a whole science about distance learning now because it's happening all around the world. And one of the things I'm supposed to do, which I quite often forget, is I'm actually supposed to stand slightly off not right in the middle. I'm supposed to stand like slightly to the side of the camera so that I'm not staring directly down the camera. But in any case, I will remember that. Now, here's what I'd like you to do. So you go online, you do research, you find an article, you add the article, and that's it. Okay, that's all I want you to do. You can review, please do, review the market model and the movements of the curves. Okay, that's going to be quite important to do because, as said, eventually it's going to be multiple moves. It's going to be supply and demand moving, and you're going to need to trace and figure out where the equilibrium goes. And that's just that step. Then we're going to take it more steps beyond there. So getting to grips with this skill is going to be really, really important. We've got today and tomorrow. Fantastic. We're going to do more work on this tomorrow. But we need to continue to progress through the course, so we are going to need to keep moving. But we will have practice tomorrow, again, at moving the curve and having several different moves, okay, and see how we get on. All right, okay, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to close the meeting there so that you have a bit of a brain break, but you're also then able to get onto the research and filling in the table. There's also a wee reflection doc or survey that you can add in, right, and that will help me also with checking the attendance and those other sorts of things too. So otherwise, as we'd say in the land of my birth, hey kornera, which means goodbye for now. Please do email me if you have any questions, worries, concerns. Okay? Bye, team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David.
Thank you. See you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, Mr. David.
Bye-bye. Bye.